Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm going to talk about what you missed if you were not at our quarterly share and support meeting tonight on April 30th. I wanted to include this slide presentation because we talked about play invitations and because then you don't have to look at my tired, lovely face. So hopefully my kids will stay asleep, and if I am too quiet because it's bedtime, please turn your volume up. So we're going to be talking about play invitations or invitations to play. So play invitations can also be referred to as strewing, provocations, or invitations, and there's your definition there. If you really get into Reggio, you'll find there is somewhat of a distinction between provocations and invitations to play. But for the purpose of this, if you hear those words, know that you're doing it if you're sitting out materials intentionally for your child to explore. So why do we create invitations to play in our home? We do this to inspire learning, invite play, and create a creative atmosphere in our homes. You can strew or invite learning in all content areas, not just art, not just science and blocks, all content areas. And invitations to play are open-ended. Even provocations that have sort of a specific content in mind when you put them out are still open-ended. You might hope for a result. Say if you're putting out maps and paper and pencils, you're hoping maybe your child will draw their own map. But if that result doesn't happen, that's okay, and there's not a specific product as an end result. So invitations to play are not crafts. It's a whole different ballgame. When you're displaying invitations to play, you want to think of whether they're inviting. It's an invitation. You want to think of whether there's beauty in that. Are they invoking creativity? Is this something easily to explore? So I like to use divided plates, the ones you see for like party dips. You can find at Goodwill, sometimes the dollar store. Trays, wooden trays or wooden boxes and baskets, and you'll see those in some of the pictures I'm about to share. So you'll have to think about that you'll be displaying materials in your home differently when you're creating an invitation to play. You won't just be sitting out bins and materials as if your children had drug those out themselves. So you'll also be adding in literature. Here I have a picture of my son a couple years ago we were reading Sheep in a Jeep, and I had put out a handful of little sheep figures and what we called a Jeep, and he had picked those up and taken those upstairs and demanded I read it over and over to him while he acted out that. So that was his invitation to play. There was literature. There's other ways to add in nonfiction as well when you are creating invitations. I also, whenever possible, add in real photos. You can print off photos from your computer. You can clip pages open in a book. We talked tonight about how coffee table books that are available in the library are great for this because they lay flat. In the picture I have, the students there were interested in Antarctica and the Arctic Circle, and so that was a coffee table book on expedition. You can see the snow and everything, and that was easily just laid open with some pictures of real polar bears from another book and some polar bear animals, and that is literally underneath as the snow that is a white towel, a white kitchen towel. So you can print off real photos of animals, places, people, settings, and more. Whatever your kids are interested in, if it's nonfiction, if it deals with nonfiction, print off real photos to include in your invitation. You can use a table. That's one example there of a wooden box. Those Melissa and Doug sets come in these lovely wooden boxes, and I put the sets in other storage containers and use these for loose parts. This is an invitation for kids kindergarten through first grade to design art with loose parts. Loose parts is a term frequently used in Reggio and play and unschool where you have open-ended materials that can pretend to be anything. They can be art pieces, they can be toys. One common picture I've seen lately is a picture of a wooden block circle, and it says like this wooden block circle can be a cucumber, a pizza, a wood, a tree stump in play. It can be like all these things because it's nature and it's you can use it imaginatively. It could be anything, and then they had compared it to a plastic toy piece, like a plastic food piece that looked like a fake plastic cucumber, and they're like, this can be a cucumber. Now, naturally, we have kids who are going to use that plastic toy for a lot of other pretend play, but the theory of loose parts is that it naturally lends itself to many different choices in play. So if you have time later and you want to Google loose parts and really get lost there, those are wonderful things to add in for your invitations to play. But you can use a table. You can also use a floor. Here's more examples of books used. And that's a magnetic puzzle on the left. And so somebody said tonight, I have dogs, I can't use my floor. Use your countertop. There's people use their kitchen counters. I've heard in blogging that they'll commonly have like a ledge that they use or a countertop that they use to invite their kids for specific strewing, specific materials. And it's so important to use what we have. There is, I didn't talk about this tonight because I just forgotten. So if you missed tonight and you're reading or you're watching this later, Instagram is a lovely, lovely thing, but there are so many Instagram people that have posted just these idealistic strewn materials that look lovely and beautiful, and they are set up how an adult would play with them. And I always want to go back and usually see just like a little kid hand in there. And I always want to go back and say, can you take a picture about 30 minutes after your kid explored those materials? Because I really want to see that. So Instagram is really inspiring, but I want you to be encouraged to use what you have. Like I have watercolors here, and we had Indian corn. It was in the fall. If you have like seashell decorations in your house, stick those in the middle of your table with art supplies and just see what happens. Now, be okay if the kids decide to paint those too. I love to throw in pine cones in the middle of the table with like pencils and markers and paper and just see what kids do, because sometimes they'll draw them and sometimes they won't, and that's okay. Again, that's open-ended. So think about what you have. You have puzzles, I'm sure, in your house. Everybody has puzzles, blocks of some kind, Play-Doh. Hopefully you have art supplies in your home. If you don't yet, you need to get on that. We all have recycled items. So you can display these items with a book of current interest or a book you like to lead your children toward, rather than saying, I really want you to explore, this or that. You can strew or invite your child to be interested in the materials and see what happens. Think outside the box. This is again a mind shift. Try to pair things that you're usually not played together and see what happens. I gave some examples there. Small figures. I say small figures, or we're talking like tiny little toys that your kids play with Play-Doh. Blocks with pencils and paper for maybe tracing, watercolors and crayons, stickers and construction paper with scissors. Those are all just fun, easy things to sit out and see what happens. But I want you to, again, try not to be focused on an end result. Some parents will, if they want their kids to trace the blocks, will actually trace a couple and then just kind of leave them there. And if you're really focused on your kids need to trace, I would sit down with them and say, I wonder what will happen, and use that I wonder language again. If I trace this block, I wonder what shape that'll be, and give them a chance to guess. And if they don't come with a guess, say, I want to find out, and trace it. But if you just want your kids tracing blocks and tracing shapes, do it with them. Don't give them an end product result. We did talk tonight in great detail about how it's so important for children to have open-ended art experiences and open-ended play experiences to build their, well, not build, to not extinguish their creativity that they are born with. And that early childhood professionals know that if they show children a picture of what the art should look like at the end of an art project or an art session, kids are going to struggle. They might do their best and come up with something similar to that, but if they don't, they're going to feel like they failed. And someone brought up how girls tend to draw nouns, people, places, things, and boys tend to draw verbs, action words. And so often, if we see boys drawing these things that really look like scribbles, they're racing in the car and it goes up this way, and they're drawing the path of that car rather than the car itself, we tend to say, but I don't see your car. Can you draw me a car? Instead of saying, wow. This is a lovely example of using what I had. This was an afternoon when I used to do full day a couple years ago, and I heard one of the kids when I was in the other room say, I want to sort these by color. And she was talking about items in our play kitchen, and we had flowers out then. And I quickly ran in, grabbed different colors of construction paper, and said, what if I lay these out here? Would that help you? And she said, yes. And I disappeared back in the kitchen to finish the dishes. And when I came back about 5-10 minutes later, she had done all this. And I'm pretty sure she noticed we needed blue things. And if I recall, we got out real blueberries and started getting at real foods after this. But this is so simple. Like, I bet you have so many things in your house that you have just not thought of putting together to invite your kids to play. So listen to what they're asking for and think of what you can put out tonight to greet them in the morning to play. And this is my biggest question. What if my kids don't play with what I set out? First of all, it's okay. If you want to put it away and try it different the next day, do that. If you want to put it away and try it different the next week, do that. Sometimes I leave things out a couple hours and kids don't touch them right at first, and that's all right. They come back later. So I have this example at the top where I had all these real fruits and vegetables on a tray. And these children were interested in cooking. They had been interested in playing kitchen, playing restaurant for weeks. So we were exploring real foods. I sat this tray out, and I think like one child touched it that day. I don't think anyone drew anything. But you notice I have markers and pencils, and it's on a tray. So it looks a little cold. It doesn't look that inviting to me. It doesn't look beautiful. I don't really want to touch it. It looks very scientific. So I believe it was a whole week later. It might have been just a couple days. I set out very similar materials, fruits and vegetables. One of them, if you noticed, I'd cut open. I did not put out markers. And I sat them on these mirror panels I have. They feel like pieces of paper I picked up on Amazon. I want to say I got like 30 for $6 or something. I'll try to link it in this post later. And the kids sat down, and for quite some time they were tracing, they were noticing details of fruits and vegetables. They asked to cut more open. I'm pretty sure we started talking about seeds that day. So if it doesn't work, try it again, but just tweak something a little bit. If you have too much out, like the markers might have been too much with everything I had out. Try to take something away. If you feel like there's not enough, maybe you put items out but you didn't add paper and pencils. I always try to add a clipboard, paper and pencils, or little pieces of paper and pencils whenever possible, because then you can jump in a label and start getting that early literacy in. But there is an art to this. So keep trying. So that's all I have for you this evening. I'm going to post some more photos and some links to ways to create invitations to play. And I hope that you guys have found this helpful. And I love to see you interacting on the board. So keep asking questions, keep trying, keep up the good work.